This beautiful scene is Walden Pond. Over 150 years ago, Henry David Thoreau lived here for a deliberate 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. Later he wrote Walden. In it he said this: "There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root." That's what common property rights are all about. They strike at the root. Common property rights resolve what appears to be the central economic root cause of the environmental sustainability problem. This is crucial because to solve the sustainability problem, we must resolve its root cause. More than anything else, what you're about to hear is a story about finding root causes and resolving them. In difficult social system problems, the portion of the system associated with root causes of systemic behavior forms the bulk of the system. Once you dig down below the surface and figure out how that portion of the system behaves, the problem is 80% solved. How does this mysterious creature called common property rights work strategically? The easiest way to explain it is by looking at its twin, private property rights. Both are property rights systems. Property rights systems for private property are everywhere. They are the fundamental bedrock of all large market systems. Such systems allow a society to efficiently manage private property. By analogy, a common property rights system allows a society to efficiently manage its common property and thus preserve the health of its air, water, and other shared natural resources. So we can define common property rights as a comprehensive system for efficiently managing a society's common property. Given this definition, it's easy to see that our world has no standard common property rights system. If it did, the sustainability problem wouldn't exist, because common property would have been self-managed all along. From this perspective, we can see that history made a little mistake that's grown into a big one. We forgot to create a common property rights system. Here's why common property rights are such a strong candidate for further research. Common property rights work just like private property rights. The difference is common property rights manage common property. This high similarity leads to a logical, and to be perfectly honest, a rather welcome conclusion. The advantage of common property rights over other sustainability solutions is that it can be as efficient as private property rights, which is the most efficient known solution for managing private property. Isn't finding the most efficient solution to problems the central goal of applied research programs? And wouldn't it be a welcome breakthrough if we could find a single comprehensive solution instead of lots of little bitty piecemeal solutions? Let's go ahead and dig down below the surface for proof of concept. Why do sufficiently mature property rights systems have such inherent high efficiency? Because they resolve the root cause of economic inefficiency, high transaction costs for particular types of property. Strong support for this conclusion comes from the work of Nobel Prize-winning economists like Ronald Coase and Douglass North, from the emerging field of new institutional economics, and from the work of Hernando de Soto, whose think tank The Economist called one of the 2 most important think tanks in the world. Let's freeze the books right here. Notice what the Times said about de Soto's book. It's the blueprint for a new industrial revolution. That's a bold claim, but the book backs it up with a mountain of proof that most of the undeveloped countries in the world lack a strong, efficient private property rights system. For example, here's a graph showing how it takes an agonizing 168 steps and 13 to 25 years to gain formal property rights to to urban property in the Philippines. But let's hear what Hernando de Soto himself has to say.
In September 2000, de Soto published his explanation of why capitalism hasn't worked for the poor. He took his message directly to some of Latin America's most remote regions.
The reason I'm going to Cajamarca now is because 12 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall and 11 years after Peru adopted pro-market policies, their situation hasn't gotten that much better, and they want to know why. The Mystery of Capital offers an explanation. It says that the system per se works in the West, but that in our country, like in much of the third world, it isn't functioning because we have missed some of the crucial elements that the Westerners had in the 18th and 19th century, like property rights, without which the system cannot function.
In the West, property rights are taken so for granted, they rarely cross our minds. But in many countries, these crucial tools of capitalism simply aren't available. In the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro, Philip Tesch's family has grown coffee for generations. He sells directly into the global market. Yet, like many in the developing world, he can't prove that what he owns is actually his.
Who owns the land around here?
The land is our property. We bought it from a farmer who was willing to sell to us. So we bought this land, although we don't hold any title for the ownership, but it's our property.
So how can you prove that's your property?
Because I'm here. I was the person who bought it, and the person who sold it to me is also around here.
So what we've been discovering is that there's a real huge paper wall that stops the poor from actually being able to develop a private legal enterprise.
Yes.
Without property rights, ordinary people in developing countries can't get a loan, a mortgage, or credit. They are excluded from the capitalist system, and the global market simply passes them by.
So without a strong property rights system, undeveloped countries cannot develop. They cannot experience their own industrial revolution. This seems to be more proof that a sufficiently strong private property rights system was the fundamental prerequisite for the Industrial Revolution. Let's continue. This is an important premise. If it's true, then it follows that once a society has an adequate private property rights system, it's primed for an industrial revolution. We live in a highly complex system. If you look back and study the economic history of the Western world, you'll find plenty of discussion on the causes of the Industrial Revolution. But with study of the system, the top factor by far is a strong property rights system. Once a country has that, when and how fast an industrial revolution occurs depends on a multitude of other less important factors, like work ethics, available labor, natural resources, capital, technology, and so on. An industrial revolution occurs when a society makes a quantum leap in its ability to transform private property into the goods and services that society needs for its well-being. From this, we conclude that once a society has an adequate common property rights system, it's primed for a sustainability revolution. Therefore, no matter how hard we try, the sustainability revolution cannot begin until the world has a common property rights system. This completes the introduction to the concepts of common property rights. We invite you to explore these concepts further in the rest of the videos and the material at thwink.org. You may notice there's a common thread running through everything. It's basically all saying the same thing. To solve the sustainability problem, we must resolve its root cause.